as you know, Sergio continues. So let's not forget what Thomas said. In his first video, he spoke about the God of the gaps. As you can see, he brought up who created God and so forth. And he actually testified, as you can see in his comments, he says, we can't explain how non-life became life, therefore there must be a God. He's saying just because we can't explain it doesn't mean it required God as an explanation. He's talking about the God of the gaps. And of course, atheists can't prove how non-life became life. They can't show it in a scientific lab experiment, and we've actually put that forward to the atheists as an argument, and they want to say how, it just happened by coincidence, just happened by chance, brainless Mother Nature got it right, blah, blah, blah. Yet when you ask them to test and put that as an argument, they say, it's a God of the gaps, you want to put God in there just because we can't do it now, you want to put God in there. And then Sergio comes back, and this is the second day. These are 5 atheists already who have ganged up. Most of them have disappeared. You've got these 2 other atheists who are sticking around. You've got Sergio, and Sergio comes back and he's trying to find deficiency in the creation, right? He's trying to say things like, please do tell me, he quotes, right, telling you exactly what he says. He says, please do tell me why your God so perfect and so righteous didn't give his most magnificent creation, the jellyfish peptide, the night vision of a cat, the nose of a dog, the skin of a shark, the keen senses of a snake. Why are just a bag of skin and bone holding a brain? To think of a creator would limit itself to generic pose. I mean, look at these ludicrous arguments. Seriously. So anyway, he says a creator never limits himself. So he's saying a creator never limits himself, but the himself is not the creation. Of course he's not going to limit himself. He limits the creation. What the hell are you talking about? But anyway, so basically I said to him, Sergio, God didn't limit himself. He limited his creation to certain imperfections, since they were not supposed to be perfect. Otherwise, they would be just like God. So these arguments are completely childish. And going back to Thomas, his point, I said to him, I'm sorry, but I don't believe that when we have no answer, we fill the gap with God. We rather draw conclusions to God as a plausible explanation. Just like if we found a machine no one has ever saw, you would conclude it was made by some engineer due to human experiences. Thus, we draw the same conclusions to God. In fact, it's the opposite. Atheists from arrogance tend to leave the gap empty even though the evidence is plausible. As for who created God, and we've actually posted videos below and we'll post it in the screenshots, Hamza Sources clearly deals with it. We don't need to go into it. And William Lane Craig on that question, clearly debunking the heavy-handed apparent argument of the atheist, which Brother Hamza shows pretty much made out of sponge. But anyway, so he goes on, Sergio continues. So Sergio, he's pretty much on the ropes. He says, he's talking about me, he says, Mustafa Sahin, for a faith head, you use quite a lot of human logic to explain the existence of God. Computer has a creator. And then, look, we'll get to his point anyway. He's pretty much on the ropes. And look at this. This is the 6th or 7th atheist, Mishuk Dutta. He comes on the stage. I mean, come on, look. How many atheists need to come and help each other, really? He says, we're talking about the same God who designed a system that allows food and air to travel through the same path before splitting off into 2. How's that intelligent? All it takes is one single mishap, like swallowing a bone that's wrong way and you're dead. System isn't perfect, so either God is using provocative language again, which is impossible according to you, or he's not that intelligent. So again, they're trying to, they're on the ropes. They're literally now, they're trying to find flaws in the creation. And like I said, we can bring up a Mercedes-Benz. You could find flaws in the Mercedes-Benz and it doesn't remove there being a intelligent designer for Mercedes-Benz. I mean, these are silly, childish arguments, as you can see, and they're coming one by one after another. I mean, there was 1, 2, 3. What was it? 6 atheists now, 6 or 7 atheists. Unbelievable, isn't it? How they're just trying to gang up now like a pack of dogs, and like I said, they're just running over each other, trying to refute me, but they've failing, as you can see. And I wrote to, he's trying to critic intelligent design and so forth. So I wrote back to him and I said, Mishuk Dutta, I think your statement hasn't taken much thought process. The reason why there are shared pipes for eating and breathing is that the more holes we have in the human body, the more the chances of bad bacteria inhabiting the body. That's why there isn't, that's why you don't have holes everywhere. I mean, that's why there needs to be separations and so forth. And if there are more holes for an airway, which is separate from food consumption, then there could be more chance of bacteria coming into the body. So if anything, it actually proves good design rather than bad design. And I said, so having a different eating pathway would introduce more holes, thus more dangerous to bacteria, and having a bone stuck in your throat. So you expect that you don't do your part and eat properly with your mouth closed. Don't talk and eat, as they say. You got to be cautious yourself and remove the bones from your meat. You don't just eat like an animal. It says, God wanted for you to do your part for the system to operate well. He didn't simply give it to you so you can go against the manual. When you buy a car, there is a procedure how to operate it. If you crash the gears by misuse, it's going to fail on you. Same thing. It doesn't mean that there's a bad design. It just means that you're misusing the body. I know you read a lot of atheistic material out there on critic intelligent design, but none of it disproves God. Like I said, if you brought a PlayStation and it failed on you, it doesn't dismiss intelligent design, mind someone who engineered it. Our human bodies, although were created by intelligent mind, that intelligent mind did not intend to overall create that object to be bulletproof. It is meant to die and break down, not last forever. Unbelievable. This is like the 8th atheist who's come rimmel murmur. I mean, how many? Look at this. He says, he used provocative language again, calls us bitch. I mean, this is what happens when they start getting upset. He says, bitch, please, life have evolved under certain conditions like high temp in an atmosphere of methane, where the sources of energy in primitive Earth were thunder and volcanic eruptions, where the life came into existence. But that's not certain if the robot is going to get live or not. It takes millions and millions of years to form life from non-living things. And my response to him was, Rimmel, can you show us the evidence life evolved millions of years from non-living? Show us this atheist mythology. I like to see a replication of those early Earth years demonstrated in a science lab. You'll be the first atheist to do so, and you may win a Nobel Prize for doing so. And again, he just completely disappears. Now, the 9th atheist jumps in. His name is Brett Putek. And he says, Mustafa Sahin, here's a link. And he quotes Mille-Urey experiment. I mean, look at it. This is the 9th atheist that I'm debating. They've all come one by one, and they're all trying to help each other. And this is Mille-Urey experiment he's quoting from. And my response was, oh my God, I still can't believe people are still posting the Mille-Urey experiment. This experiment actually went against creating life, as it's only created left or right hand, only amino acids, which were disastrous for life. Miller showed is how the building blocks for life can form gradually through amino acids, but that is far from what we ask. Notice, and of course, these building blocks were dying. I mean, they weren't doing anything as well. So let's keep that in mind. But this is far from what we asked. Notice it is intelligent mind Stanley Miller constructed the building blocks with. It didn't happen by chance, even if you tried to build them. Miller had to set the right conditions and note that the building blocks are not exactly life, rather it is early elements that go on to make life forms. I ask you to bring us raw elements through the Big Bang, ingredients such as amino acids get created, then proteins, then life forms including plants, then eyes, kidneys, limbs, and body parts and things like this, and human beings. Then all by itself, the earth has all of these ecosystems, and Miller experiment is far from showing this. In fact, one professor said, this is a biological professor, he's profound, he said, if we were to take an already existing functioning cell, deconstruct it with all its machinery software, then added the right conditions, it's not going to reconstruct itself by itself. You can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again, basically. It's never happened, and those who assume it can happen need to depend on a lot of faith rather than evidence, because they just don't have the evidence. And look, the atheists are pretty much on the ropes. And look at this, Aris Barbara comes along now. I mean, they're going completely off topic, red herrings, too much smelly fish in the room now. Aris Barbara is like the ninth atheist who says, okay, so without evolution, Adam and Eve are the forefathers of black people, Asians, Indians, and with the amount of inbreeding, very few retards, more or less, quoting. I mean, this guy believes that he's a retarded offspring of 5 monkeys having butt sex with monkey fish frog. I mean, congratulations, like seriously. I mean, look at these arguments that they're making. They're going completely off topic. He's talking about Adam and Eve. How could they be all of the races? How could they produce all of the races of the world? I mean, these are the arguments that they're using, and we'll get to that anyway. We'll refute him on that point. And you see Sergio, he comes back. This is Sergio. He was pretty much on the ropes, but he's come back. He said, you keep pulling fancy terms and BSs out of your ass. He's again using provocative language. He obviously didn't want us to be powerful as him. What a bitch. Well, look at this. He's cursing God. Shame on him. He says, how in a billion dimensions would a mortal know that? You're a joke. So he's basically saying that how could it's ridiculous that God doesn't create things as perfect as himself, But then this is a ludicrous argument. Then they'll say, oh, look, there are things that are more powerful than God. There are things more perfect than God. How can your God claim he's the greatest? These are the silly arguments they make. So it's like a double-edged sword. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And I said to him, it amazes me how they critic the windpipe. And then again, they keep going on about this windpipe. Why would God create the same windpipe? And I said to him, it amazes me how they critic the windpipe. No matter how God creates things, it seems they will always find an excuse. Even if he create a separate windpipe, they will always seem to find another endless excuse. It's like when a new iPhone comes out, there is always a group that critique its functions. I'm sure if you create a human being, there will always be people who critique your design. And like I said, critiquing the designer does not dismiss the designer, rather disagrees with the design. Sergio said to him, stop getting too emotional. Give us instead a rational argument why it's a BS to create things less powerful than himself, referring to God. I see the insults have already started. Sergio comes back and says, for the simple fact that you're not omniscient, bro, you claim to know a lot of shit about God, but you don't have intellectual maturity to admit it. And again, we, us, them cannot disprove anything that doesn't exist or have proof of exists. I cannot disprove there are dragons inside my room. Oh, here we go. Now, this is another typical argument the atheists use. Because there is no physical evidence for it. Do you even see the error in your logic? He would not be creating us as equal as him, considering he is omnipotent. A little shark skin and shit like what won't make us omnipotent, bro. Can you pull your head out of your, again, provocative language stuff before stop being biased? Then perhaps he's going on and on. He goes, stop asking for answers you're not able to give, blah, 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 blah. They're just going off topic, off red herrings. They've completely ignored the the designer, the robotic hand, comparing to the human, completely ignored it. They're going into emotional arguments, as you can see. And so I basically said to him, here we go again with the old spaghetti monster argument. This is my response to him. Since you agree you don't possess all the information in the universe, why do you hold on to the position that God certainly does not exist? And then they want to talk about arrogance, yeah? It seems there is always a possibility for everything like multi-universe theory or the possibility of alien life existing somewhere beyond our solar system. But when we speak of intelligent design or a higher power like God out there, we don't even like to consider entertaining that idea, rather mock it by comparing it to some invisible dragon. Why is that? We hardly hear atheists even wanting to admit to entertaining such ideas. Soon as it comes up, they give it all these excuses. Have you thought why that may be? He accuses me of acting as though knowing all the answers, yet atheists hold on to there is no God as if they have proven it as a fact. Yet we are the arrogant ones. Work that one out. And watch, he completely ignores my response to him. He goes on to say, he says, stop using this Sergio is now responding. He's saying, stop using every comment I make against me. And by the way, he's pretty much the only atheist that's sort of sticking around. So I'll give him some of that, credit. So he says, stop using every comment I make against me. That shifts the kindergarten kids, man, up and tell me where you'd find all those damn omniscient knowledge. This is going to keep going on and on, bro. I'm going to ask you nicely, bro, since you were the one who claimed omniscient knowledge. Now tell me, how do you know all that mumbo jumbo? He goes on, Mustafa, he goes, you just pulled some omniscient shit from your, again, provocative language. He goes, you demand all the answers and give whatever. Of course I demand answers. You got to prove to me your atheism is true about, God not existing and everything came by chance. And you can't provide any evidence of that. He goes, come on, answer, I'm next. So my reply to him was, the same way your atheist prophets claim to know about omniscient knowledge about the mumbo-jumbo about how abiogenises and cosmic and living evolution happened apparently without the act of God millions of years ago. I then listen to the other side of the argument and draw my conclusions. I would rather put my trust into God and Scripture than to believe in atheist prophets who admit science gets reapproved from day to day. Oh man, did this anger a lot of atheists. Well, this is the 11th atheist who comes along. His name is Randy Bergout. He says, well, this Mustafa guy makes some sense somewhere for a believer. He says, Mustafa, your very own religion was and is reproved from the 2 day, assuming you're a Christian or whatever. It all started with Abraham. And then he says, then came Judaism with all its camps. Then came Christianity with all its camps. Then came Islam with all its camps. Same thing with science, he reckons. He says, except science gets better and more accurate. But he's made a fallacy here. The message of Islam was always one, which was Tawheed. It never got improved as you claim. It was Christians and Jews who invented lies upon that scripture, and that's where Islam came in to bring them back to the original message. So there was no it was improved and so forth. So he's making a fallacy here, and besides, we're comparing evidence here, and science gets approved, right? It gets reapproved every time, right? So if they're claiming, there's no God, or if they're claiming, this is how it happened, evolution took place and abiogenesis, it all happened by chance, and it came about through random mutations without intelligence. All that nonsense can get reproved. So, how does that even compare to God? This is ridiculous. And you can see how Sergio comes back and he completely ignores my question. Remember, I asked him about the question the question about you do not for a second entertain the idea about God being responsible. Yet, and they don't answer why, and they always give up all these other hypotheses. Oh, it could be from a multi-universe. Oh, it could be from alien life. Oh, it could be from, all these other things. But they don't like to entertain the term God. He completely ignores that, and he, raises more questions. So he writes back and he says, we don't have prophets, and this is what Sergio is writing. He says, we do not have prophets, they are scientists. In number 2, he says, we have more proof of entropy, biogenesis, and every kind of empirical data to support our claims. Number 3, he says, Earth wasn't created millions of years ago. It was probably trillions or even more. What the hell is going against his own science? He says, have you heard of entropy, a form of creation derived from destruction, or if it happens, all right, who knows what cocktail gases, matter, space created a spark of life, what we call Earth. Wow, a spark, bang, and Earth is created. Amazing. He goes, why do you reject evolution so passionately? Think about the platypus, bro. If it doesn't make you realize that evolution is up and well, anyway, he goes on. So I brought him to the attention of why he's not answering those questions, and Sergio actually wrote back, says, the reason why we most likely reject a godlike figure is because of the bad and the immoral shit it does in the Bible, and because there isn't a chance of it existing, or by means I am certain that if it ever came to light, it would be that God you claim, but sort of alien type creature with advanced shit. And he's just off his tabs. So I said to him, I replied back to him and I said, I didn't talk about the biblical version of God. I just spoke about a high intelligence God and why such an idea is not entertained. So he's going back to the Bible. I mean, we don't see atheists entertaining their version of a deity God as a possibility. I mean, they could just come up with the atheist God, right? Or something like that. Like, why, no God, we don't believe no God, but there's a God out there for the atheists that don't believe in no God except this particular deity. And that's far from the biblical Islamic version. I mean, why don't they even entertain that idea? And he basically didn't have a reply to that. So you try to use an emotional argument to reject and try and conflate it with the biblical God. But again, he's refusing to answer why. Why isn't there a possibility of a God according to the atheist mindset of what a God is? And again, they don't like to entertain it, and that's why I'm saying they're arrogant themselves. There's a possibility for everything. Alien life existing on other planets, multi-universes existing here that we can't prove or see. Other new species coming into existence. Other new species could still be there, but we just haven't discovered them. Oh yeah, there are possibilities for all those things except for God. We'll go back to Randy's question. This is the other, I think, was a 10th atheist. He says, Randy says, exactly, science gets better and more improved. And I said to him in response, I said, thanks, that is my point. So science may very well disprove evolution one day. I hear even recently there is a new idea that the ape-to-man chain may actually be the other way around. I can actually send a link to that. We can post it below this video. You know how you see the ape to man chain? You start with the little monkey type creature and he's crouched up and then he starts walking and then he becomes a human being and so forth. Well, apparently there's new think tank, atheist or scientific think tanks that are saying it's possibly the other way around. So amazing, isn't it, that new ideas, and like I said, science is being reapproved. New ideas are coming forward. I'm sorry if you're losing a bit of focus because the atheists are jumping over each other to try and tackle me. We're going back and forth, but have a look. So we'll go back to Sergio's points where he wrote, we don't have prophets, they are scientists. My basic reply to him was, same thing, they predict and interpret the data according to their opinions of how things may have happened. But yes, you follow them like gospel truth, even though science gets reapproved. You not only follow them like prophets, but trust their version of how it happened. After all, you didn't come up with the term evolution. You were given that by your peers. He then asks, we have more proof of entropy, biogenesis, and every kind of empirical data to support our claims. My reply to him is, actually you don't. And I raise the point to prove abiogenesis, life from non-life, and it has not been proven by random spontaneous episodes. So stop lying. He says, number 3, Earth wasn't created millions of years ago. It was probably trillions or even more. Have you heard about entropy, a form of creating derived of destruction? So he says that the Earth was just created by a spark. I said, So my reply to him was, so thank you again for disagreeing with your science that says our universe is about 12 to 13 billion years old. But you say the Earth is like trillions of years old. So how does that even make sense? How could the Earth be trillions of years old when, or how, and the universe is only 12 to 13 billion years old? I mean, you can't have the Earth outdating the universe. That would be the Earth being outside the universe. I mean, this guy's being crazy now. He then says, why do you reject evolution so passionately? Think about the platypus, bro. It doesn't even realize evolution. So yeah, my reply to him was, evolution, or should I say Darwinian evolution, is a hypothesis of how they think millions of years ago there were a change of kinds in the species. As Dawkins suggests, these changes of kinds are not observable, but that's how it is explained by putting the puzzle together like a crime scene. But I would argue that God does not reinvent the wheel. He creates by his own unique signature of design for why animal species and their genetic coding is similar. Not that they have evolved from one another, rather they share the same signature for why they may seem to have evolved from one another. So like I said, it is an interpretation issue, and besides, either way, none of this dismisses the primary source, i.e. God, being responsible. There was a 10th, I think, atheist who said there are many Christians who accept evolution. And my simple reply to them was, well, I can argue there are also a good portion of creationist scientists who reject Darwinian evolution. I think there are between 18 to 20% from the scientific community. So your point is actually void. And this is probably the 11th atheist that came on. He's saying, let me tell you how life came into existence. His name is Randy, and look what he writes. He says, let me tell you how life came into existence in case you missed some classes. So basically, in the early stages of Earth, simple organic molecules were synthesized from the atmosphere, RNA and DNA. They rained down on the Earth. Keep in mind, these are living title shits and they like to reproduce, and they did. And through natural selection and evolution, they eventually get a cell membrane, start looking like bacteria, then complex metabolism start popping up. He goes on to say, he says, keep in mind this was millions of years ago, not 7,000 years ago. He's assuming I'm a Christian, which I'm not, but anyway. So my reply to him was, I said to him, I will now become an atheist if you can show me this proof of how the universe and life forms were created millions of years ago in a science laboratory experiment, from Big Bang to the smallest atoms, then to the universe, then life forms. Bring Mother Nature, and I want to see her do it all by herself in a science lab without intelligence required. I said to them, I'm ready to convert to atheism today and denounce my religion. And all you 12 atheists have already come here. I'm ready to denounce my religion. I will take Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, well, he's dead now, as my new savior and prophet. And likewise, I will believe Mother Nature is my new God. Watch the next set of comments, and this is my prediction, will be red herrings, and they will instead say what most will say, we will one day show it. Or the other thing they will say is try and continue to say we don't understand evolution or abiogenesis. This usually happens when they themselves cannot explain it or practically prove it via scientific recreation method. in a scientific lab. They try basically to insult your intelligence on the subject as a get-out card. Have a look. When I put the atheist to the spot, look what Mr. Sergio says. I mean, at least he's honest. He says, I'm good. I'll throw away my ego. Let the gentleman in on have fun. So basically, he's throwing in the towel. Notice when I put them to the challenge, they throw in the towel and they no longer wish to dialogue. And he shows a bit of humbleness. I like Sergio's actual attitude, actually. He says, I do agree with you on one thing. He says, must there be a God? It won't represent the biblical one. So he actually acknowledges that there could be a God, and if there is, then it's not the biblical one. So he agrees with me on that. He agrees at least there is a God, but it's just, there could be a God. So he's on the ropes, actually. He's pretty much on the ropes. He couldn't answer the challenge, and he concedes that there is a God. There is a possibility to a God. I guess that's what he's getting at. And I said to him, he says, that he's not egoistic, and I said to him, you're pretty much a little bit egoistic if you want other people to have fun with me. But anyway, so here's a atheist who comes back again. He says his name is Daniel, and now he gives a try. The other atheist fell out of the argument, who is Sergio. So we have here, as you can see, Daniel Al Cirillo. He comes back, stubborn one. He says, you cannot recreate in laboratories the universe in evolution. Big Bang, inflation, dark ages, first stars, acceleration, that took billions of years in process. We're so insignificant to express such arrogance. We can only do so much. We can do CERN, we can do NASA, but we can't create the 14 billion years of the universe. Life was a small part of it, doesn't mean it's important or significant. And notice, that may be a little bit difficult, but it's not obviously difficult if it happened by brainless Mother Nature. I mean, you have intelligence, man. You have the science, you have the power, you've got the scientists to do it. But, we're not comparing you with a retarded child who's only 2 years old that doesn't know how to do a math equation. That's what the start of the universe was. It came from this primitive backwardness, right? And that's why it took so many billions of years. But you could fasten up that process in a Big Bang and start creating all those things, but we don't have that. So, and just in case an atheist wants to bring up the collider, the collider that they built, that collider didn't actually create anything. The mass that came together, through the protons shifting and joining together, it created mass, and that's what happens when protons connect and so forth. But those protons, those energy, mass is energy, right? And that basically became energy that we could see. So they didn't actually create something, that they actually showed us something that we couldn't visibly see. But once it connected, it became mass. So they didn't really create anything in the collider, hydro collider. So just in case they want to bring that up. And like I said, if it was plausible, then, it should show us how mass was created, how a universe was created, ecosystem, life forms. We don't see that. But these garbage atheists want to tell us, it just happened by chance. It was just spontaneous. It was this, it was that. But they can't actually prove it, and they want to quickly dismiss God. But they love saying, it just happened by chance. It happened without God. It happened by brainless nature. Nature did it. But you say to them, well, show us how nature did it. And they can't really replicate that. So I said to Daniel, thank you for being honest that the universe beginning and creating a replication of that, including life forms emerging from that, cannot be created even under guidance of human minds in a science experiment. Thank you for admitting the assumption most atheists make in how life started without the act of God cannot be proven from such a beginning in a scientific experiment. It's not arrogance, my friend. It's not more arrogant than an atheist who asks for the proof of God. What is arrogant about asking for evidence of such claims? Since when was it arrogant to ask for the first-hand evidence? Instead, you know what's arrogant? When your atheist fathers say that's how it happened and believe it's true without proving it. That sounds like more arrogance. Like you said, it can't be proven because it takes millions or billions of years. So why do they arrogantly say that's how it happened without the act of God? It just happened by random coincidence and luck when the same method cannot be shown in a real practical example. You know, it's interesting. We're going now back to the point because, he came back. There's another atheist who came back to say, here it is, Aris Babra, going back to the point of Adam and Eve, apparently, how is it one man can create all the races? He says, I didn't assume they were British, because I asked him, I said, what, do you assume that they were just British white people? And he says, this is concerning Adam and Eve, and how could they create all the races? He says, I didn't assume they were white people. He says, you just avoided the argument. He goes, there are a lot of differences, races with different traits, even though there was only supposed to be one at the beginning. If evolution isn't true according to your holy book, there should only be one race. I mean, look at his silly argument. I'll post the link from creationministries.com. Could Adam and Eve have been given different races and things like that? You can read the link below. But I equally find it, this is my response. I said to him, I equally find it fascinating that atheists find it difficult that all races can come from one man and one female. Possibly Adam was semi-black, semi-Asian looking, and Eve was semi-Anglo looking and semi-Indian looking. And this is my point. These atheists, they find it hard to believe that these parents produced all the colors over thousands, if not millions of years of generation. This is apparently too hard to believe. But then atheists tell us all the races over billions of years came from one single entity known as the Big Bang. Work that one out. Besides, showing different races doesn't prove Darwinian evolution of change of kinds. It just proves variances among the same species. They are still human. There are no change of kinds. They are all human and not half human, half something other than human. Another Christian actually wrote in my defense, he says, I have freckles, my father doesn't, therefore I'm a different species according to devotees. My friend has one arm, therefore he has a different species too, the one-arm species. There are 7 billion different species of humans on Earth. So, obviously these are variances and these aren't different species. And this is what evolutionists want to do. Even when they look at the ape man theory and all this garbage, they want to look at all these different variances and say, oh, look, their DNA is exactly almost similar to ours. But God doesn't reinvent the wheel. Obviously, their DNA is going to be the same, because God creates in the same way with DNA and so forth, and he shifts those DNAs to create other things that look similar to one another. Doesn't mean they've actually come from the same thing. The origins are the same that God created them, and that's why their code is obviously similar, because God uses the same design process to do that, the same material. So obviously there's going to be similarities. But of course, atheist evolutionists want to misinterpret it and say, oh, they all derive from one another. But this is just their nonsensical interpretation. So if a bird, for example, has got 2 eyes and a human being has 2 eyes, obviously they're going to have the same DNA. That DNA is going to show 2 eyes in the coding and system and so forth. It doesn't mean that humans evolved from birds. It means that both human beings and birds have got a genetic coding to identify those 2 eyes, because God chose to give them 2 eyes, right? Both for the birds and the human beings. Doesn't mean they evolved from one another. So God obviously uses the same signature of design, so that's why you're going to have similarities between the two. But it doesn't mean one, just because one has it and so does the other, that means they both evolved from one another. This is just ludicrous. And we know that the genetic coding is really protected. Like they say, chimps are, 99% or 98% accurate towards human beings. But you see that the genetic coding is so protected that if it is 99.8%, why can't our scientists, intelligent people, manipulate it and turn them into 100% human? You see, even though it's 99% accurate or close, it is so protected within its own genome that when you try and play around with it or manipulate it or change it, it doesn't work. It doesn't become a human being. So as much as it's close to us, it's far apart, is world apart to us. And, with our scientific capabilities and intelligence, we can't even manipulate it. But we believe that this one single cell, it miraculously gave all these billions of people life, and it shaped our whole universe, Earth. Mother Nature just did it all by itself without intelligence, this brain dead consciousness. It just created its own brain. But you know what? Us intelligent human beings, we can't even manipulate the ape's DNA and turn it into 100% human. I mean, look how amazing and ludicrous that is. When they say, oh, it was just, chance, Mother Nature did it. But us human beings, we're finding it so difficult that we can't even help our ancestors come out of the jungle and become humans like us. And watch how Daniel Alcera, he's completely defeated on this. He actually comes back. He says, all I can do, he welcomes me. He says, I'm welcome. He's acting a bit polite. He says, all I can do as a insignificant speck in this vast universe is say we cannot, or I don't know. So far, what we have accomplished is just this. The good thing, though, is that the humans don't stop. We love to learn new stuff and explore. Some, however, including you, has succumbed to a god as an explanation to things you can't understand. You are lame. Thank goodness you're not a legislator or an influential rapper. If for somehow you are a teacher or anything but religion, please consider changing jobs so do not infect the minds. So my response to him was, Australia, I actually like how you're open-minded and hold to a view of agnosticism where you admit you don't know. At least most militants, New Age atheists don't like to admit they don't know. Rather, they say, we do certainly know God does not exist. Why would I change my mind when I can pick the best explanation we have as opposed to we don't know? Until we know, then I wouldn't need to change my mind now, would I? So I'm happy where I am until the atheist community in further proof or investigation can prove otherwise. About the friend thing, chill out. Oh yeah, so anyway, I told him to chill out at the end because he didn't want me to be his friend or something. I didn't intentionally want to be his friend anyway. But anyway, respect is, honesty at least. And to end the discussion, this is pretty much it ended. I mean, all these atheists came, and Ben Zinger, here's another one. He was the 14th or 15th atheist that's come along to try and, refute us. But he says, so he's talking about the beginning diagram of the video where it speaks about the robotic hand and the human hand. He says, you're literally conflating inorganic elements to robots. But the response to that is, Ben, so this is my response to him. I said, Ben, inorganic elements emerge from the very same essence of where the elements of robots came from. All their primary sources comes from dead materials. If you go back to where the inorganic materials come from, they eventually came from gases and stardust, i.e. the beginning of the universe. So not helpful when you're trying to act smart. So how is conflating dead materials a fallacy? It is not. In fact, all elements are conflated at the Big Bang. Go listen to Lawrence Krauss, who says all the origins of matter come from one singularity known as the Big Bang, and he even goes a step further to say our universe came from nothing. No living thing, no matter, no atoms, zilch. If you like to see the video, I can actually post it to you, and I'll actually in fact post it below this video so everyone else can see it. That's it. God bless. There you go. We've defeated all of the atheists, Some of them humbled themselves and said, we don't know, and so forth. But as you can see, they do follow their fake atheist prophets who claim they know that this, and this, you go watch all their programs, the Discovery Channel or so forth, they'll say, oh, this is how it happened, Mother Nature did it, it happens millions of years ago, life came from non-life, and it came here, and then you ask them for a replication of this, and then they back out of it. They simply back out of it. And that's the evidence there. Yes, we follow the best explanation, and the explanation we have, God is definitely the creator, and He's the one who's legislated, and that's the proof there. So there you have an intelligent design. You look at that human hand of that, you claim that's a coincidence. Look at the robotic hand, and that robotic hand has a designer, then it's evidence. That's proof enough that the hand also has a creator. That's it. We've defeated the atheists, and you can see for yourself, they came one after another. I mean, every single one of them have been debunked, destroyed, refuted. Praise be to God.